Hello, friends, followers, and fellow realtors. Welcome to the Waves podcast created by the Highland Lakes Association of Realtors. We designed this podcast for realtors to help innovate, educate, and elevate their real estate practice, one ripple at a time. Our goal is to help navigate the waves of the industry and dive into local trends, topics, and beyond by interviewing experts that add value to our mission. Think of us as your proverbial life jacket to keep you afloat in these crazy times. We hope to make a splash in your day.
Well, welcome to the latest edition of Waves Podcast. This is Joe Don Dockery. I'm Burnett County Commissioner of Precinct 4 and also the Chair-elect for the Government Affairs Committee for the Highland Lakes Association of Realtors. We have with us today Ellen Troxclair, House Representative from District 19, and we're going to just visit a little bit today.
Thanks for having me, Commissioner.
Well, sure. Glad for you to be with us.
Yes.
First, you've gotten through your first freshman session.
Yes, sir.
I guess maybe with the time you went through session in 4 special sessions, it was more like a senior year.
It really, I felt like I was baptized by fire. So the bad news is that was a tough way to start. The great news is, man, we are rocking and rolling and so ready to go for this next legislative session starting in January.
Exactly. Well, I'm sure that you felt like, okay, well, I need to know where my desk is first, but by the end of the 4th special session, you were probably very vested. Yeah,
people don't, realize the difference between the state legislature and Congress sometimes. You know, Congress is a full-time paid position. State legislature is a mostly volunteer, supposedly part-time position. The idea, of course, which I do agree with, is that people should go home, legislators should go home and actually live under the laws that they're creating, right? And that we want people to still be in the workforce and paying the taxes and doing all the things that they're doing in addition to being a legislature. So we only meet once every other year constitutionally, from January to May every other year. But the reality is, we had, like you said, 4 special sessions last time, 3 the time before that. So I'm hoping that going into this session, we really are able to get in there, get our work done efficiently and effectively, do the people's work, and get back to our districts.
Speaking of the people's work, you have to work with 149 other representatives in the House. So how did that work in your first session?
Yeah, it's
building rapport and
absolutely. No, I mean, any I think legislative body is best when you're able to build personal relationships with your colleagues so that you, even if you don't ultimately agree on the goals or the way to get there, you know which ones are the straight shooters, which ones you maybe can't trust, and where to focus your time and energy. And it's certainly, I'm a realtor in my real life, and it is certainly different than the real estate world where, you're kind of directly, who's on the other side, what you're negotiating. In politics, it's like, not only do you have the 149 other people in the chamber, but you also got lobbyists and interest groups and all these other people. And so you never quite know, where the obstacles are and how to avoid them. But luckily, I had the experience of serving as a chief of staff for about a decade in the Texas House before I ran, as well as on a city council. So I did have the general experience of doing those things, and I feel like we've done pretty well so far, but can't wait. There's still some big issues to address in the coming months, so I can't wait to. And on one hand, I can't wait to get back there and do the work that Texas needs. On the other hand, it means that I'll be stuck in Austin, so please pray for me.
We will do that. And you alluded to the fact that of your past presence on the Austin City Council, being the lone conservative voice on that council, and that Mackenzie Kelly, I guess it's in that seat now.
Yes, sir.
And
yes.
So,
she's in a different seat, but she is holding the place of the only conservative voice on a very liberal council. It's a tough job. So,
Well, so that the people who are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast will understand, what counties are you representing in District 19?
Sure. So the best part of the Texas Hill Country, Western Travis County, I'm the only Republican that serves any portion of Travis County, so still in the minority from that perspective. And then also Burnett, Blanco, Gillespie, and Kendall County. So from Bee Cave to Burnett to Bernie and pretty much everywhere in between.
You mentioned or alluded to the fact of working with the House previously. Is that, I mean, you're a mom.
Yes.
You're a realtor.
Yes.
What made you decide, okay, well, I'm not using enough of my time. I need to figure out, I need to manufacture some time to run for the House?
The passion issue that led me to run and get involved in the first place has been and continues to be our property taxes and our overall cost of living. My family was struggling as a young family, working multiple jobs, trying to do what we could to buy our first home, and then keep up with the rising property taxes after we did save enough money to buy that first home. And I was working with so many clients as a real estate broker who were they always ask, well, okay, if we can afford this down payment, what is of course, property taxes are impacting their monthly escrow payments and everything else. So it's like, they want to know what the schools are good in the area. They want to know what the traffic's like, what the road infrastructure is like. So all of those things really combined to help make me, I think, an effective voice for the people that realtors like you and I work with on an everyday basis. But it was really the property tax issue, because again, at the time I was unfortunately living in Austin, and they were increasing our property taxes to the maximum amount allowed under state law, 8% year over year, which means our taxes were doubling every 9 years, and just spending willy-nilly on stuff that I didn't agree with, I didn't support, weren't basic functions of, city government, like funding the police, for example. And so it was really that frustration, thinking, well, if we're working this hard, how are other people able to afford this? So I really do, to this day, looking back, it was definitely a God thing, because I was always happy to be the person writing the talking points, researching the bills behind the scenes, while doing real estate as well. I was always always a hard worker. So it was a challenge for me to decide, okay, I'm going to be willing to do the public speaking. I'm going to be willing to be the person in the front of the room, explaining my decisions. But I just really woke up one day and thought, I cannot complain if I'm not willing to step up and do something about it. And against all odds, I mean, certainly for the city council position, and in some respects, even for the position that I'm holding now, the odds were definitely against me. So I try to be, but I think people can see that I'm authentic and passionate, and really in it for the right reasons. So I'll serve as long as it's in God's plan. And then when that time is up and when my work is done, gosh, I'll be so happy to go back to my my business and my family full time.
That's what I tell people all the time. I said, we have a plan and God has a plan.
Right.
We're going with God's plan.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Whatever that may be.
We're just along for the ride.
Exactly. So I'm sure it feels like you just got through a session, but now you've probably had a chance to look at some of the interim studies that were done. What do you think are going to be some of the hot topics coming up in this next session?
Yeah, well, I think the border remains top of mind for a lot of people, and a lot of this depends on what the federal government ends up doing. But ultimately, Texas has been filling the gaps in the absence of help on the border from the federal government. And the issues with illegal immigration are continuing. So we did put the largest investment ever into border security that went to boots on the ground, border barriers, and things like that last session. So I want to make sure that money is being allocated as effectively as possible, and we're doing everything that we can to protect Texas and kind of make up for the lack of attention from the federal government on that issue. I think there's some water is certainly on the top of everybody's mind, especially in the Hill Country. We are looking at what do we, again, made a big investment last session, but it's just, it's not enough to be quite candid. And so there are a few things that I've been working on, whether it's incentivizing people to do things like rainwater capture, making sure that HOAs aren't penalizing people for doing xeriscaping. So kind of focusing on the conservation side and incentivizing things there, but also being a little bit more proactive on the infrastructure side. We really need to find a dedicated funding source for water infrastructure, for desalination, for water pipelines. One thing that we're looking at is a dedicated sales tax. Many of our roads in Texas are funded through TxDOT, through a dedication portion of our sales tax going to our roads. I think it's time that we really have a conversation about whether we need to do something similar for water. And if so, is there something that we need to give up to make that transition and make sure that there's not a tax increase associated with it? But water needs to be moved to the front burner. A few other things that I'm working on, making sure that, of course, public education is going to be a hot topic, education in general. I want to make sure that every child in Texas has access to a great education. Unfortunately, that's not the case for too many kids, especially in our more liberal urban city centers. I've been on a soapbox this summer talking about cell phones in schools, and after the data that has come out that has really showed the amount of time that our kids are spending on social media apps during classroom hours and the impact that that's having on their mental health, suicide rates increasing, and anxiety and depression increasing. I really want to do everything I can to support school districts in having phone-free classrooms where cell phones are put away, out of sight, out of mind, from bell to bell, so that they can really get back to learning, reading, and writing, and socializing with their peers.
Brings a new definition to peer pressure.
Golly. I am so grateful that my kids are on the younger side and we have the information that we have today, because we never really had a community conversation about, like, okay, this is what's going on. This is how addictive these things are. This is how our kids' brains are going to be manipulated. Should we or shouldn't we, have these things available to them at all hours of the day? When you think back on, your childhood, you would have thought nobody sends their kid to school with a TV set and says, hey, put this TV out on your desk, while you're trying to pay attention to this teacher. And these poor teachers, they're the ones that are stuck with the burden of having to try to discipline and enforce. Most campuses already do have some kind of phone-free policy, but once those classroom doors close, it's up to the teachers to try to fight against it. And so we're looking at ways. There's been about 24 school districts who have adopted some sort of kind of neoprene locking pouch situation where kids really have the freedom to learn. And I just want to do everything I can at the state level to make sure that they're supported in that decision, that we're providing funding, that decision. I do think that we're also going to see, I've voted for every potential increase to public education that I've had the opportunity to vote on, increasing teacher pay. Like, I just really want to ramp up ramp down kind of the divisiveness that we've seen in some of the discussions around education, and ramp up the idea of locking arms for the best outcomes for our kids, in ways that may be creative solutions. But that includes a combination of increasing teacher pay, increasing public school funding, making sure that our public schools have the best resources available to them, while also ensuring that low-income kids who are struggling or disabled have access to seek the best education for them if their school is not able to provide services to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could go on and on. I didn't even...
You're on a roll.
I want to talk about land ownership, foreign land ownership, and all kinds of other stuff. And property property tax, we made a big cut in property taxes last time, having the state take over more funding of our public schools and reducing the local portion of our property taxes, which again is important to probably everybody listening to this podcast. So I hope we continue with that. And I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this is only possible because of the thriving economy that we have. And so the growth is challenging, but ultimately, the revenue that we are bringing in from people who are moving to Texas, as long as we can make sure that we're deploying those new tax dollars in a way that serves all Texans, we can all be better off.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, getting back to the realtor topic,
yes.
Are there any topics specifically that you know of that realtors either can be of assistance to, lend a voice to, that's going to be coming up in the next session?
Sure. Well, I think and hope that property taxes and land use will kind of continue to be at the top of the legislative agenda. It's hard because I feel like in real estate, so many topics impact our businesses and our clients' decisions, and you could have a 10-page list of quote unquote legislative priorities that somehow touch our industry. But ultimately, if everything's a priority, then nothing is really a priority, right? And so I have been very grateful for the stances that the local associations have taken in the past to really hone in on what are the top 3 to 5 most impactful things, because realtors are a huge force at the Capitol. I mean, every single state legislator has a robust number of realtors in their district, right? And so the things that we choose to spend our time and advocacy on can really make an impact. And so I hope that impact continues to be kind of on making sure that homeownership is affordable, available, that supply and demand are appropriately balanced, that people can have water in the homes that they buy. But I would caution against having kind of mission creep where it's like, you're getting into all these other issues as well. We've seen, again, some of the local associations in other areas of the state think that they want to get into social issues and things like that, which is, I don't see as a core mission to our shared businesses. So, but I do think that property taxes and land use issues will continue to be top of mind for legislators.
Yeah, we appreciate your advocacy on water. I know that I made the statement not long ago that I feel like Texas is, with water, is essentially where we were with the power in the 30s.
Right.
That we've got water in certain parts of the state, but no way to distribute it. Same as we did in electricity, and thanks to the LCRA and entities of that sort, we were able to provide a distribution system that allows everybody to have good reliable electrical power throughout the area. And we need to be able to do that with water as well. And maybe it's desal, maybe it's working with other states. I don't know exactly how that works, but we need a water highway is what we need.
Right. Yep. I think water is the new currency in our state, and so luckily it's coming to a kind of crescendo point where all hands are on deck. I mean, I know the Railroad Commission is talking about water and how they can make sure that they're doing right by their industry. The legislature's talking about it. So it is top of mind for everybody, and I think that we'll see some pretty landmark legislation passed this session that will build on the investments that we made last session.
Mm-hmm. I know that LCRA is trying to deal with the low inflows and things of that sort as we appear to be becoming more arid in our region.
Yes.
And the Highland Lakes is the water source for essentially everything east.
Yep.
And so it's a lot of pressure on our system up here.
That's right.
Being able to find a way to renew that resource would be what we need to try to find.
Yep.
Do you have anything you'd like to wrap up with, or do you?
All right. I guess I would just, encourage people to continue to engage with me directly. You can find me on all kinds of social media platforms at Ellen Troxclair. I have an amazing staff both in the Capitol office and out in the district, that we try to be as engaged as possible in local community issues, while also doing our jobs and making sure that we're, voting properly on the 8,000 pieces of legislation that we expect to see come across our desk between January and May of this session. But it's just such an honor to do what I do, and I'm so grateful that the people of this community have put their trust in me, and I will continue to work every day to make sure that I am being the most effective voice for the Texas Hill Country that I can possibly be, while being a business owner and a mom to 3 little ones. But ultimately, as I heard Chip Roy say last night at a rally, if Texas is the best place, the Hill Country is the best place to live in the state of Texas, right? And Texas is the best state in the nation, right?
Correct.
And America is the best country in the world, right? So therefore, we are living in one of the best places to live, in the world. And they're never, even though this is a massive, a big district to cover with a lot of intricacies, there's never a day goes by that I'm, driving through this 5-county area and not totally overwhelmed and grateful by God's creation and the people who have made it so special. So I'm really just want to say thank you to y'all for hosting me, for having me, for being and just continue members to be advocates for the things that are critical to their families and their businesses.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely. And I will testify that Ellen is easy to contact, and very engaging. So if you'll reach out to her, I'm sure that she will be happy to respond.
Thank you.
And we do appreciate you being with us today. And I guess that'll wrap it up for Waves today.
All right. Sounds good. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.